Welcome back, everybody. We've got some pretty big news here on this Thursday as Auburn has landed the commitment of Joseph Phillips, the top 247 linebacker slash edge rusher. He can do both. Auburn lands him over Georgia. Guys, if you're just watching this on YouTube and you haven't checked us out at auburnundercover.com and you're watching this on Thursday, June the 15th, you can still join us for 60% off an annual subscription. So definitely make sure to come check us out over there and also subscribe to the YouTube if you're not already. It's free and it helps us out. But I'm joined here by Jason Caldwell. Jason, when Joseph Phillips first got offered by Auburn, that was his first ever offer. He didn't even have a recruiting profile on 24/7. We built it for him. I remember you talked to him on the phone that night when he first got offered, and we went to his game just a couple of days later. I guess it was last November, somewhere around there, because it was Cadillac Williams and the interim staff. Now it ended up being a blue blood recruiting battle that Auburn comes out on top. Georgia was the team that really captured a lot of momentum over the past couple of weeks or so. Tennessee was involved too. He had offers from everybody. Clemson had offered him. Alabama had offered him. Everyone was in the mix, but it really came down to Auburn and Georgia. And Auburn pulls out a huge win, kind of at the buzzer a little bit to pick up Joseph Phillips.
Yeah, and this is a guy that's been a priority guy really since I think when Cadillac and those guys offered him, it started. But when Hugh Freeze and Josh Aldridge, these guys came on board, he's been a priority guy since then. 20 minutes down the road in Tuskegee, big physical linebacker, can really run, athletic basketball guy, has all the things you're looking for, and just kind of scratching the surface of what he's going to be as a college football player. The guy that we talked to Coach L.A. O'Neal at Booker T, and he said, look, he can be a linebacker, traditional linebacker, but he can bend and turn and run and rush the passer, and it's a guy that gives you a lot of versatility. So when you look at it, this is a really big addition. The kid he's listed, we have listed at 251. He said 235, 240, somewhere around in there. This is a big linebacker, and this is a guy that's going to be a guy that can pop off the edge, do a lot of things. And this is one of those that you kind of put an asterisk beside and go, hey, this was a battle that you need to win a few of these down the road somewhere. And Auburn was able to win one of these just like they did at the end of the year last year with Keldrick Falk, and they did with Connor Lew. Now you win one against Georgia. Those are the kind of things that you've got to have if you're Auburn, if you want to start contending and competing once again in the Southeastern Conference.
Yes, no, you're exactly right. This is one of those guys where he's in your own backyard. He's 20 minutes away. He grew up an Auburn fan. He's been to Auburn more than any other college campus, and it's not really particularly close either. These are the guys that, if they're a priority, if it's a guy that you really like Joseph Phillips, you can't let them get away for optics purposes alone, let alone the player that Joseph Phillips could be down the line. And Jason, you actually got a chance to talk with Joseph. Just what was big takeaway for you, or what was really the reason when you got to talk with Joseph where he kind of told you why he zeroed in on Auburn there at the end?
Yeah, I think I think familiarity was huge for him. We've heard home a lot from kids, but it's home for a guy like Joseph Phillips. I think it's a place that he's familiar with. He knows that it's going to be football, school, and I think for him, being from a small town too, you kind of get enamored a little bit every once in a while with something new and shiny and fresh. And in the end, he thought, and I think it probably came down to too, look, that's a place where I can get distracted pretty easy. I think he felt like this is a place where he could buckle down and do some things. So that was big. And then proximity to home as well. Family's important. This is a place where you start talking about, being 20 minutes away, your parents, your grandmother, all these people can hop over, can watch you play, can meet you for dinner one night, do those things. That's not happening if you're in Athens, Georgia, or other places. So I think that was a big deal for him as well. And then, just that bond with the coaching staff. So I do think that connections, that family feel, and all those things were really big for Auburn in landing, one of their top targets in this class.
Yeah, I feel like one of my biggest takeaways from this recruitment and from this win, obviously it's not over. You still have to sign him and hold on to him over the next 6 months or so. But one of my biggest takeaways is the awareness out of the Auburn staff, in the sense that they picked up on the fact that Georgia's trending. And, last Thursday, June 8th, all of a sudden everything's really pretty heavily favored around Georgia. He had just come off his official visit to Georgia. Ton of buzz there. We show up for the 7-on-7 tournament, and the first person we see on campus is Joseph Phillips, who's not participated in the 7-on-7 tournament, but came there to work out with the staff and kind of participate in the camp a little bit in a sense. So that was kind of a big takeaway for me that, the staff, Josh Aldridge, Hugh Freeze, these guys get it. They understand. They can read where recruitment is going. And they read it. And Joseph Phillips even said it. He said, let me pull up this exact quote. He said, from the start, they were always strong. I feel like in the past week, though, since everything went on with Georgia and Tennessee, they really buckled down and came to the conclusion, this is who we want, and this is who we're going to do our best. We're going to do our best to get you there. The staff picked up on the momentum change, which personally I think is a big deal.
I agree. I think, instead of going, oh, well, we might be on the outside looking in, they're like, no, that's not good enough. And you're right, getting him back on campus was a big, big deal. And I think for Auburn, just reinforcing the fact that, hey, look, you're our guy. And I think it's, and Joseph talked a little bit about it too. Instead of being one of 8 or 10 guys, he's a guy that, hey, instead of we want you, for Auburn is we need you. I think he wanted to be needed, not wanted. And, hey, this is a huge need area for Auburn. When you start talking about building, I think he felt that. I think he felt the need instead of want. And I think for him, that was a big deal.
Yeah, let's wrap up here for a couple minutes and talk about who could be next for Auburn, because this week alone, you've already picked up Bryce Kane. You picked up Kensley Foston. Now you've picked up Joseph Phillips. All of a sudden, you go from 5 commitments to 8. And, before Joseph even had announced his commitment time on Wednesday, I had written a story, who could commit to Auburn next. And I had a bunch of names in there. And it feels like Auburn sits in a really good spot for a lot of them. I'm just going to read some names off to you, Jason. And honestly, it feels like a lot of these guys are Auburn leans. Auburn sits in a good spot. One of those two. DJ Barber, the linebacker out of Clay Chalkville. Malik Blockton, defensive lineman out of Pike Road there. Jamison Riggs, he'll be on campus this weekend. Auburn sits in a pretty good spot there. Wyatt Simmons, the linebacker out of Hardin Academy. Red Morgan, he was unfortunately not able to make it for his official visit because of a family issue there, but still sitting in a good spot there. Khalil House, the offensive lineman from Houston County. Reese Baker, the in-state offensive lineman. Jalen Crawford. There's a ton of guys that feels like Auburn sits pretty close on the cusp of adding, and this staff was looking for a domino effect, and maybe this week is really what's going to get things going.
Yeah, and another guy that I think really liked it too was Cohen Eccles when we talked to him, offensive line.
Yep.
Texas. I mean, there's some of those guys. I think offensive line is where I'm leaning. I think they'd like to start getting the ball rolling there a little bit, because it's not a hugely deep offensive line class, and so I think Reese Baker, Khalil House would be 2 guys I would kind of look at. These are guys that have camped at Auburn. They've seen in person. They know exactly what they are. And so I think, one of those guys could be a guy there, to watch for. And so there is some momentum, and momentum is huge in recruiting. We've seen it. You start to see the ball rolling a little bit now. And once that happens, it sometimes can get other guys ready to go. Okay, I'm good now. I see it. Let's make a move. And so for Auburn, there's a lot of those guys that are still out there on the board. And, these official visits that have come through, whether it's Cam Coleman or the guys that are coming up this weekend, there's some guys that can really move the needle pretty quickly for Auburn if a couple of those guys pop.
Yeah, no, Auburn sits in pretty advantageous spot to get things rolling. And we've had a ton of coverage of that over at auburnundercover.com. So if you're not over there and you just happen to be watching this on YouTube, you're missing out. We've had a ton of VIP coverage. Everything that we've talked about has been way more in depth over there. So definitely make sure to check us out. If you're still watching, or if you're watching this on Thursday, and if it's still Thursday, June 15th, that is, you can join us for 60% off. I believe the deal then goes down to 50% off an annual sub. So still a pretty good opportunity to join us. Definitely make sure to come check us out over there. We had commitment analysis. We had the commitment story with quotes from Joseph. I think we have some other stuff as well, obviously this video. So we've got a ton of coverage of this. We've got a ton of coverage of what's next. As you're watching this, most likely there's a 7-on-7 tournament going on at Auburn with a ton of talented names there. So definitely make sure to come check us out over there, and we will catch you guys in